There's a simple truth in biology that most people overlook. Your body is not a fixed object. It's a dynamic system that rebuilds itself every single day. Bones regenerate, muscles repair, hormones recalibrate. Even your brain rewires itself through a process called neuroplasticity every time you learn something new or form a habit. But here's the surprising part. This transformation doesn't just depend on your workouts or your mindset. It hinges on something far more fundamental, something many people don't get enough of or take in the wrong way. Micronutrients, specifically vitamins. While they might seem basic, almost boring, the right vitamins taken consistently can literally change how your body functions, not in some vague feel-good way, but in measurable science-backed ways. For example, did you know that low levels of just one vitamin B12 can shrink your brain tissue and impair memory? Or that vitamin D acts more like a hormone than a vitamin, directly regulating over 200 genes tied to immune function, muscle strength, and mood? Most people think of vitamins as something to supplement just in case. But what we now know through neuroscience and nutritional biochemistry is this. When you consistently nourish your cells with the right vitamins, at the right dosages, and in the right forms, your brain sharpens, your metabolism becomes more efficient, your sleep improves, and even your emotional regulation becomes more stable. Why? Because the enzymes and cellular machinery that drive every aspect of your physiology are vitamin dependent. They are like locks, and vitamins are the keys. This matters deeply, not just for longevity, but for your energy levels, your focus, your resilience, and even how you handle stress. In other words, if you're trying to optimize your health or even just survive modern life with its overstimulation and fatigue, then the daily nutrients you feed your cells are not optional, they're foundational. So in today's episode, we're going to explore the 6 most essential vitamins you need to be taking daily, especially if you want to see real physical and mental transformation, what the latest research shows about how they impact your brain, muscles, hormones, and more. And most importantly, how to apply this knowledge using simple habits and timing strategies that help your body actually absorb and utilize these vitamins effectively. This isn't about megadosing or falling for gimmicks. This is about precision supplementation grounded in science and turning that science into sustainable behavior change. Let's begin with a bird's eye view of the 6 vitamin principles that can profoundly reshape how you feel and function starting today. If you're someone who eats a relatively balanced diet, fruits, vegetables, maybe some whole grains, lean proteins, you might assume your vitamin levels are fine. But here's what the research shows. Over 90% of Americans fall short in at least one essential micronutrient. And for many people, the issue isn't a full-blown deficiency that shows up on a blood test. It's what's called a functional deficiency. That means your levels are technically normal, but too low for your body to perform at its best. Think of it like this. Your car might have some oil in the engine, but not enough to run smoothly. There's no emergency, but over time, wear and tear builds up. The same applies to your body. Let's take vitamin D, for example. The standard medical reference range for vitamin D is often between 30 to 100, but optimal brain and immune performance, according to meta-analyses and reviews in journals like Frontiers in Immunology and the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism, typically occurs around 50 to 70. That's a big gap between normal and optimal. Why does this matter? Because your body's enzymes, the specialized proteins that repair tissue, generate energy, and even build neurotransmitters in your brain depend on these vitamins as cofactors. Without enough of them, those processes slow down or misfire. You may not feel sick, but you'll feel foggy, fatigued, irritable, or more prone to injury, and you won't know why. Here's the real kicker. Our food isn't as nutrient-dense as it used to be. A landmark study from the University of Texas at Austin analyzed USDA data and found that between 1950 and 1999, levels of vitamins and minerals like calcium, phosphorus, and iron in fruits and vegetables had significantly declined. The cause, industrial agriculture and soil depletion. Even if you're eating a salad, you're not getting the same vitamin C or magnesium your grandparents did from that same food. Layer on top of that the stress of modern life, which depletes B vitamins and magnesium, poor sleep, which impairs nutrient absorption, medications like proton pump inhibitors and metformin, which interfere with B12 and folate uptake, and suddenly you realize eating healthy isn't always enough. Let's bring this into your daily life for a moment. Have you noticed you're more tired in the morning even after 7-8 hours of sleep? Or that your memory slips a little more than it used to, searching for words mid-conversation or rereading paragraphs you just saw? These are often signs of low B12 or magnesium, two nutrients that quietly power everything from mitochondrial energy production to nerve signal conduction, and they're frequently low, even in people who look healthy. One study from Tufts University found that nearly 40% of adults over 26 have B12 levels in the low normal range, enough to impair cognition, but not low enough to get flagged in routine labs. What's happening in your brain when this occurs is profound. B12 is essential for the creation of myelin, the protective coating around your neurons. Without it, nerve impulses slow down and brain fog sets in. Meanwhile, magnesium acts as a gatekeeper for NMDA receptors, which regulate learning, memory, and mood. Without enough magnesium, those gates stay open too long, leading to neural overstimulation, anxiety, and poor sleep. So what can you do? A simple tool to apply is this. Build a foundational supplement stack that covers the most common functional deficiencies. Think of it not as a pill to fix you, but as nutritional insurance, especially if you're training hard, working long hours, or dealing with stress. Start here. Vitamin D3 with K2, 2,000 to 4,000 IU daily with a fatty meal. Check levels with a 25 OHD test. Methylated B complex, especially if you feel mentally fatigued or are plant-based. Magnesium glycinate or threonate, 200 to 400 milligrams at night to support sleep, muscle repair, and mood. And remember, consistency beats intensity. You don't need megadoses, you need sustainable daily nourishment that aligns with your physiology. There's a striking biological synergy between two nutrients that most people overlook, vitamin D3 and magnesium. Each is powerful on its own, but together they operate like a central command system, coordinating how your cells create energy, regulate inflammation, repair muscle, and even manage mood. Let's start with vitamin D3. While it's classified as a vitamin, it actually functions more like a hormone. Once synthesized from sunlight or taken through supplementation, D3 is converted in your liver and kidneys into calcitriol, the active form that influences the expression of over 200 genes in your body. These genes play key roles in immune function, neuromuscular control, and even the production of serotonin, the mood-regulating neurotransmitter. Now here's something you might not know. Vitamin D3 is useless without magnesium. Magnesium is required at every step of vitamin D metabolism. It activates the enzymes that convert vitamin D into its active form. It helps shuttle calcium into bones rather than arteries, and it supports the receptors in your brain and body that respond to vitamin D signals. So if you're taking vitamin D without enough magnesium, it's like installing solar panels, but forgetting the wiring that connects them to your power grid. Let's make this real. Have you ever taken vitamin D supplements and still felt tired, anxious, or moody? Even though your blood levels looked normal? That's often a sign of underlying magnesium insufficiency. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that magnesium intake significantly influences the effectiveness of vitamin D in maintaining optimal serum levels and physiological benefits. Without it, vitamin D gets bottlenecked. What's happening in your brain is equally important. Magnesium is a natural calcium channel blocker in the nervous system. It calms overactive neurons, particularly in the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, regions responsible for memory, focus, and emotional regulation. In fact, magnesium threonate, a form shown to cross the blood-brain barrier, has been linked to enhanced synaptic density and cognitive function in animal studies. Meanwhile, vitamin D influences brain function through its role in regulating neurotrophic factors like BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which support the growth and survival of neurons. Together, D3 and magnesium don't just support your body, they optimize your brain. A quick tool to apply here. Take vitamin D3 in the morning, ideally with a meal that includes fat, such as eggs, olive oil, or avocado. Fat increases absorption of this fat-soluble vitamin. Pair it with magnesium glycinate or threonate in the evening. Glycinate supports muscle relaxation and sleep. Threonate crosses into the brain and supports cognitive performance. Dosages to consider. Always check with a qualified healthcare provider. Vitamin D3, 2,000 to 4,000 IU per day for most adults. Blood level goal, 50. Magnesium glycinate or threonate, 200 to 400 milligrams per day, ideally in split doses. And for better synergy, add vitamin K2, MK7 form. It works with D3 to ensure calcium is directed into bone tissue rather than accumulating in arteries, which is crucial for long-term cardiovascular health. Have you ever noticed that your sleep quality improves when you're getting more sun during the day, or when you've spent more time outdoors and less on screens? That's not just about melatonin. Vitamin D modulates your circadian rhythm through gene expression in the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the brain's internal clock, and magnesium is involved in melatonin synthesis and GABA activation, both of which are critical for deep restorative sleep. This duo also plays a role in muscle performance and recovery. Low D3 is linked to increased injury risk, slower muscle repair, and decreased testosterone in men. Low magnesium can lead to cramps, twitches, and decreased ATP production, the energy currency of your cells. Put simply, without these two nutrients, your body and brain are running on low battery, even if everything else looks okay on the surface. If this insight is helping you, consider subscribing. We dive deep into science-backed tools like this every week to help you optimize your brain, your body, and your life. Let's start with a simple question. Have you ever felt mentally drained by mid-afternoon, even when your day hasn't been particularly intense? Or maybe you found yourself rereading the same sentence multiple times, struggling to focus. These moments are more than just low energy. They're often signals from your neurological engine, and the fuel that powers that engine is frequently depleted. Specifically, I'm talking about the B vitamins, a family of 8 essential nutrients that are absolutely critical for brain energy, nerve function, and mood regulation. What's happening in your brain when B vitamins are low is quite profound. These vitamins, especially B1, thiamine, B6, pyridoxine, B9, folate, and B12, cobalamin, serve as coenzymes in mitochondrial energy production. That means your neurons can't efficiently produce ATP, cellular energy, without them. The result? Brain fog, fatigue, and poor memory. It's not about motivation, it's about metabolism. Let's unpack a few highlights. P1, thiamine, the starter switch. Thiamine is essential for initiating carbohydrate metabolism. It turns glucose, your brain's primary fuel, into usable energy. When thiamine is low, you might eat a healthy meal and still feel mentally sluggish. Research from the Journal of Clinical Psychopharmacology shows that low B1 is linked to irritability, poor short-term memory, and depression-like symptoms. B6, pyridoxine, the neurotransmitter archetype. B6 is a cofactor in the synthesis of dopamine, serotonin, GABA, and norepinephrine. In other words, without enough B6, your brain struggles to make the very chemicals that regulate mood, motivation, and sleep. A recent study in human psychopharmacology found that high-dose B6 supplementation reduced anxiety symptoms in young adults, likely by supporting GABA pathways, the brain's primary calming mechanism. B9, folate, and B12, cobalamin, the DNA repair team. These two work in tandem to regulate homocysteine, an amino acid that, when elevated, is associated with brain shrinkage and cognitive decline, especially in older adults. A meta-analysis in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition showed that folate and B12 supplementation improved memory and processing speed, particularly in people with elevated homocysteine. What's important to understand is that these vitamins don't work in isolation. They're part of a larger metabolic pathway called the methylation cycle, a biochemical circuit that affects DNA repair, detoxification, and neurotransmitter balance. When even one of them is lacking, the whole system slows down, like pulling a spark plug from an engine. And yet functional deficiencies are incredibly common. Up to 20% of adults over 60 have B12 deficiency, largely due to reduced stomach acid or long-term use of medications like metformin and PPIs. Folate intake is often inadequate in people who avoid fortified grains or have genetic mutations like MTHFR, which affects folate metabolism. Vegans and vegetarians are especially at risk for B12 deficiency since it's only found in animal products. Here's a practical analogy. Think of your brain like a high-performance sports car. You can give it premium fuel, good sleep, clean food, regular exercise, but if the ignition system is broken, no spark, no movement. B vitamins are the spark. So what can you do? A simple tool to apply is this. Incorporate a methylated B-complex supplement, especially if you're noticing mental fatigue, mood dips, or poor focus, even when the rest of your lifestyle is dialed in. Look for methylcobalamin, methylfolate, pyridoxal 5-phosphate, P5, and avoid synthetic folic acid, which many people don't convert efficiently. And take it with your first meal of the day. Vitamins are water-soluble and best absorbed with food. Many people report a subtle lift in focus and mood within the first few weeks. You can also boost your intake naturally. Leafy greens for folate, pasture-raised eggs and liver, chickpeas and salmon for B6, whole grains for B1. A final point, stress burns through B vitamins fast. If you're navigating high demands, emotionally intense days, or cognitive overload, your need for B vitamins increases. Supplementation isn't about overloading your system, it's about meeting the metabolic demand of a high-performance life. If you're serious about building a brain that performs under pressure, consider subscribing. This channel is here to equip you with the tools to do just that, grounded in neuroscience and real-life application. Now we'll dive into a vitamin that very few people talk about, but one that might be just as critical as vitamin D, vitamin K2. It's the gatekeeper of where calcium goes in your body, and it may hold the key to protecting both your arteries and your brain. If I asked you which vitamin helps your bones stay strong and your arteries stay clear, you'd probably say calcium or vitamin D, and you'd be partly right. But there's a third, often ignored nutrient that silently determines whether calcium becomes your body's greatest ally or its long-term threat. That nutrient is vitamin K. Vitamin K2 acts like a traffic controller for calcium. It doesn't just help your body absorb calcium, it tells calcium where to go. That's a critical distinction because calcium in the wrong place leads to hard arteries, stiff joints, and even cognitive decline. Here's what the research shows. Vitamin K2 activates two key proteins, osteocalcin, which directs calcium into bones and teeth, matrix GLA protein, MGP, which prevents calcium from depositing in arteries and soft tissue. Without sufficient K2, these proteins remain inactive, and calcium can accumulate in places you don't want it, like your arteries or kidneys. A large study published in Thrombosis and Hemostasis found that people with higher K2 intake had a 50% lower risk of arterial calcification and cardiovascular death compared to those with lower K2 intake. What's happening in your brain is equally compelling. A 2013 paper in Neurobiology of Aging linked low K2 levels to reduced sphingolipid production, a class of fat molecules critical for protecting neurons and maintaining the structure of brain cell membranes. Deficiency may contribute to cognitive decline, especially as we age. Think of K2 as the guardian of your internal scaffolding, keeping bones dense, arteries supple, and neurons well insulated. Now let's clear up a common confusion. Vitamin K1 found in leafy greens and vitamin K2 found in fermented foods and animal products are not the same. K1, phylloquinone, primarily supports blood clotting. K2, menaquinone, supports calcium metabolism and cardiovascular health. Within K2, there are subtypes. The most studied and bioavailable is MK7. It stays in your bloodstream longer and is more effective at activating MGP and osteocalcin compared to other forms like MK4. So how do you get more K2? Here's a simple tool to apply. Add fermented foods like natto, fermented soybeans, Gouda, or brie cheese to your weekly routine. They're rich in natural K2. Or supplement with 100 to 200 micrograms of vitamin K2, MK7 daily, especially if you're also taking vitamin D3. Remember from part 2, D3 increases calcium absorption. But without K2 to direct that calcium to your bones, you run the risk of depositing it in arteries instead. That's why the D3 POS K2 combination is a non-negotiable duo for long-term health. Have you ever known someone who takes calcium for bone health, only to later struggle with heart issues? That's not coincidence. It's a misfire in nutrient synergy. The calcium is being absorbed but not used properly. That's what K2 fixes. And there's another benefit. K2 may help reduce inflammation. A 2020 study in Nutrients showed that K2 supplementation decreased inflammatory markers like CRP, C-reactive protein, especially in individuals with metabolic syndrome. That suggests K2 plays a role not just in mineral regulation, but in immune and metabolic health as well. And if you're an athlete or someone recovering from injury, K2 becomes even more critical. It accelerates bone remodeling, reduces soft tissue calcification, and supports vascular recovery, especially when paired with weight-bearing exercise. Here's one more way to think about it. Vitamin D is like the spotlight that illuminates calcium. Magnesium helps the body process it. But vitamin K2 is the sculptor, shaping where that calcium lands and how it supports or undermines your longevity. If this breakdown of K2 opened your eyes to a crucial piece of the health puzzle, consider liking this video and subscribe for more grounded, science-based content to strengthen your brain, body, and habits. Now we'll explore a vitamin that works behind the scenes to reduce cellular damage, slow aging, and support mitochondrial power, the master antioxidant that your body stops producing as you age. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like your energy just isn't what it used to be, not because of poor sleep or overwork, but like your baseline vitality has subtly declined? What's happening in your body at that point is likely mitochondrial dysfunction, a slow but progressive breakdown of how your cells produce energy. And one of the central nutrients that governs this process is coenzyme Q10. CoQ10 is often referred to as the spark plug of your cells. It sits inside your mitochondria, the powerhouses of your cells, and plays a pivotal role in the electron transport chain, the final step of converting food into usable energy. Here's what the research shows. Without enough CoQ10, your cells literally can't make enough energy, and the first tissues to suffer are the most energy-intensive, your brain, heart, and muscles. Now, here's where it gets even more relevant. Your body makes less CoQ10 as you age, and by age 40, levels may decline by 30. That decline is further accelerated by stress, certain medications, especially statins, and metabolic dysfunction. So what happens in your brain when CoQ10 is low? You may experience brain fog, poor memory recall, slower processing speed, greater mental fatigue during cognitively demanding tasks. One study published in Biofactors found that CoQ10 supplementation improved cognitive performance and fatigue levels in patients with chronic fatigue syndrome. Another in neuropsychiatric disease and treatment showed improved attention and executive function in people with mild cognitive impairment. And it's not just the brain, your heart also depends heavily on. In fact, your heart muscle contains the highest concentration of mitochondria in your entire body. A meta-analysis in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that CoQ10 supplementation significantly improved cardiac output and reduced mortality in patients with chronic heart failure. That's how central it is. And here's something many people miss. Statin drugs, which are widely prescribed for cholesterol, deplete CoQ10 production. This is one reason why muscle pain and fatigue are common side effects. If you're taking a statin, CoQ10 supplementation isn't optional, it's essential. Let's also touch on a more subtle but profound effect, oxidative stress.
CoQ10 is one of the body's most powerful fat-soluble antioxidants.
It prevents oxidative damage to mitochondria, which is critical because once mitochondria are damaged, they trigger inflammation, accelerate aging, and impair recovery. A 2015 paper in Frontiers in Physiology described how CoQ10 supplementation helped restore mitochondrial function and reduce oxidative stress in aging athletes, improving endurance and recovery time. So what's a simple tool you can apply? Consider taking 100 to 200 milligrams of ubiquinol, the active bioavailable form of CoQ10, especially if you're over 40, on a statin or experiencing chronic fatigue or cognitive dullness. Why ubiquinol? Because the standard form, ubiquinol, needs to be converted in the body, and that process becomes less efficient with age. Ubiquinol skips that step. For best absorption, take it with a meal containing healthy fat like olive oil, avocado, or nuts because CoQ10 is fat soluble. You can also boost endogenous production with regular aerobic exercise, which stimulates mitochondrial biogenesis, intermittent fasting, which improves mitochondrial efficiency and recycling via autophagy, and cold exposure, which has been shown to activate brown fat and enhance mitochondrial function. Here's a real-life analogy. Think of CoQ10 like the ignition coil in your car's engine. Even with perfect fuel and oil, if the ignition isn't sparking, you're not going anywhere. That's what CoQ10 does for your body. It ensures your cells can actually use the nutrients you eat and the oxygen you breathe to make energy. If you're finding these insights valuable and want more practical, science-backed tools to support your energy, clarity, and performance, go ahead and subscribe. This channel is built to help you optimize, not just survive. Next, we're heading into the final and arguably most overlooked category, a fat-soluble vitamin that acts more like a master hormone, influencing everything from immune resilience to mood to hormone balance, vitamin A. When people think of vitamin A, they usually think of eyesight, and they're not wrong. But what most people don't realize is that vitamin A operates more like a hormone than a traditional vitamin. And when it's deficient, which is surprisingly common, your immune system, hormone levels, skin, vision, and even fertility can quietly suffer. Here's what the research shows. Vitamin A, particularly in its active form, retinol, regulates the expression of over 500 genes related to cell growth, immunity, and epithelial integrity, which is a fancy way of saying it keeps your barriers strong, your skin, gut lining, and mucous membranes. In fact, a paper in the Journal of Immunology described vitamin A as a key regulator of immune tolerance and defense, especially in the gut. It supports the production of secretory IgA, the antibody that lines your gut and respiratory tract and acts as a first-line defense against pathogens. So if you're someone who gets frequent infections, has skin issues, or struggles with gut health, low vitamin A could be a missing link. But that's just the surface. Let's talk about hormones. Vitamin A is crucial for the production of sex hormones, including testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. It works in tandem with cholesterol and thyroid hormone to support the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal HPG axis, the central command system for reproductive function. In males, low vitamin A is associated with reduced testicular function and lower testosterone. In females, it's essential for ovarian health and menstrual regularity. It's even critical during pregnancy for fetal development, particularly the formation of the eyes, heart, and nervous system. A 2020 study in Nutrients showed that vitamin A deficiency impaired fertility in both men and women, and that repletion restored reproductive function. And what's happening in your brain when vitamin A, one word, dysregulation. Retinoic acid, a metabolite of vitamin A, plays a role in neuroplasticity, dopamine signaling, and circadian rhythm regulation. A 2012 paper in Trends in Neurosciences outlined how retinoic acid influences synaptic strength, memory formation, and emotional stability. Low levels are linked to higher rates of anxiety and depressive symptoms, likely due to impaired serotonin and dopamine receptor sensitivity. So why aren't more people aware of this? Because vitamin A deficiency doesn't always look dramatic. It creeps in subtly. You get dry skin more often. Your night vision worsens. You get sick more frequently. Your libido drops. You feel emotionally flat or hormonally off. And it's more common than people think, especially for those following low-fat or plant-based diets. You see, the plant form of vitamin A, beta-carotene, must be converted to retinol in the body, but that conversion is inefficient in many people, especially those with BCMO1 gene variants, which impair the enzyme responsible for the conversion. That's why animal sources of retinol, such as liver, egg yolks, and full-fat dairy, are more reliable. Here's a simple tool to apply. Incorporate 1 or 2 servings per week of high retinol foods like beef liver, even in capsule form, pasture-raised eggs, or cod liver oil. If supplementing, use retinol palmitate in moderate doses, 2,500 to 5,000 IU per day, unless under medical supervision. But a key warning here, more is not better. Vitamin A is fat-soluble, and in extremely high doses, it can become toxic. Always stay within recommended ranges, and don't megadose long-term unless guided by a clinician. Now let's talk synergy. Zinc is needed to transport and activate vitamin A in cells. Vitamin D works alongside A to balance immune responses. Healthy fats like those from olive oil, avocado, or grass-fed butter are necessary for absorption. So if you're low in any of those, your vitamin A might not be working as well as it could. Think of vitamin A like the director of an orchestra, guiding immune cells, hormone production, skin renewal, and even mood regulation with quiet authority. Without it, everything becomes less coordinated, more chaotic. If this breakdown helped you connect some dots in your health, maybe around energy, immunity, or hormones, drop a like and share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe. This channel is about real transformation backed by real science. Now, let's bring it all together. In the conclusion, we'll review what we've covered, and I'll share one simple science-backed challenge to begin upgrading your internal chemistry today. If you've made it this far, you've done something important, not just by watching, but by choosing to understand your biology. Because once you know how your body and brain actually function, you're no longer guessing, you're engineering your health from the inside out. Let's recap the 6 essential vitamins we explored, and more importantly, the why behind them. Vitamin D3, not just a vitamin, but a neurosteroid that regulates over 1,000 genes, enhances mood, focus, and immunity, and protects against neurodegeneration. Tool, take 2,000 to 5,000 IU with K2 daily, especially in low sunlight seasons. Magnesium, the mineral behind over 300 enzymatic reactions, including those involved in sleep, stress regulation, and neuroplasticity. Tool, use magnesium threonate or glycinate at night to support calm, learning, and hormonal regulation. Omega-3s, EPA and DHA, fundamental to brain structure, anti-inflammatory signaling, and emotional regulation. Tool, get 1,000 to 2,000 milligram of EPA plus DHA daily from wild fish or molecularly distilled supplement. Vitamin B complex, the ignition system for mental energy, neurotransmitter synthesis, and cellular metabolism. Tool, take a methylated B complex in the morning to support focus, energy, and resilience to stress. CoQ10 ubiquinol, the cellular spark plug that keeps your mitochondria and heart energized while protecting against oxidative stress. Tool, use 100 to 200 milligrams of ubiquinol daily, especially if over 40 are taking statins. Vitamin A, retinol, the hormone-like nutrient that fortifies your immune barriers, balances sex hormones, supports vision, and improves brain plasticity. Tool, incorporate 1 or 2 servings of animal-based vitamin A weekly or supplement cautiously within safe limits. These are not just nutrients, they're molecular levers. They directly influence your neurotransmitters, your hormones, your inflammation levels, your sleep quality, your metabolism. In other words, they shape the way you feel and the way you function every day. And here's the deeper point I want to leave you with. Your chemistry creates your reality. When your brain is undernourished, everything feels harder. Your willpower drops. Your perspective narrows. Your capacity to connect, create, and recover shrinks. But when you nourish your biology, even just 1% more each day, you regain access to your true potential. More energy, more patience, sharper focus, stronger boundaries, deeper sleep, and over time, a different life. So here's your challenge. Pick one vitamin from this list that resonated with a symptom or pattern you're currently experiencing. Maybe it's brain fog, poor sleep, low libido, frequent colds, or low mood. Then, starting today, intentionally support that pathway with food, with supplements, with behavior for the next 4 years. Track what changes, tune in, take note. When you take consistent action backed by neuroscience, the results are rarely subtle. Because this isn't about hacks or trends. It's about upgrading the internal operating system you use to meet the world every day. If this video opened your eyes to how your body and mind are connected through these nutrients, let me know in the comments, what are you going to focus on first? And if you want more tools like this, grounded in research, translated into real life, subscribe. This channel is here to support your growth intelligently and consistently. Until next time, stay curious and keep building a body and brain you can trust.